Undercover CEO pretends to be a delivery driver, shocked by how his employees treat him. Ethan Cole drummed his fingers on the polished mahogany of his desk, staring at the spreadsheet that had consumed his attention for the past 3 hours. The numbers didn't lie, but they certainly didn't tell the whole truth either. As the founder and CEO of SwiftBite, the fastest-growing food delivery service in the country, Ethan had built his empire on 2 principles: exceptional customer service and taking care of his people. Yet something was very wrong. "This doesn't make any sense," he muttered, pushing back from his desk and walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office. 42 floors below, the city sprawled like a living organism, pulsing with delivery drivers in the company's signature blue jackets zigzagging through traffic. A knock at the door broke his concentration. "Come in." Melissa Zhang, his chief operations officer and right hand since the company launched 5 years ago, entered with another folder. Her usual confident stride seemed hesitant today. "I've got the latest customer satisfaction reports," she said, placing the folder on his desk. 92% positive feedback. Up 2 points from last quarter. Ethan nodded but didn't smile. "And the driver retention issues in the southern districts?" Melissa's expression tightened. "Still problematic. We've lost another 12 drivers this month. Exit interviews are vague. Most cite better opportunities or personal reasons. Yet our customer surveys show people are tipping more generously than ever," Ethan said, pointing to the open laptop. 87% of customers report tipping at least 15%. So why are driver complaints about missing tips up 300% from last year? Melissa shifted her weight. "The audit team found no systematic issues. It could be customers claiming they'll tip in the app but not following through. Or maybe drivers hoping for sympathy." "No," Ethan cut her off, more sharply than he intended. He softened his tone. "Sorry, Mel. But these aren't just numbers to me. These are people who trusted us enough to join SwiftBite. Something isn't adding up." He walked back to his desk and pulled up an email from a former driver named Jessie Chin. It was the 3rd message she'd sent to the executive feedback address, which Ethan insisted on monitoring personally despite his PR team's objections. "Listen to this," he said, reading aloud. "I loved working for SwiftBite until I was assigned to Zone 9. Suddenly my tips disappeared. When I asked my manager about it, he said I needed to learn how things work around here. When I pushed back, my shifts got cut until I couldn't make rent. I know someone important will never read this, but you should know your company is stealing from the people who make it run." Silence hung between them. Melissa finally spoke. "Have you forwarded this to HR and legal?" 3 weeks ago," Ethan replied. "They conducted what they called a thorough investigation and found no evidence of wrongdoing. Just like the last 7 complaints." Ethan closed the laptop decisively. At 36, he still retained the lean physique and restless energy that had driven him to build SwiftBite from a startup operating out of his garage to a company now valued at over $2 billion. His salt and pepper hair, prematurely gray from the stress of scaling so quickly, and the faint lines around his eyes were the only signs of the toll his ambition had taken. "We're missing something fundamental, Mel. These audits and investigations aren't working because whoever's responsible knows they're coming." Melissa's brow furrowed. "What are you suggesting? I need to see it for myself. No filters, no corporate reports, no sanitized tours of facilities where everyone's on their best behavior because the CEO is visiting." Understanding dawned on Melissa's face. "Ethan, you can't be serious." "I am serious. I'm going undercover as a delivery driver." Melissa's professional composure cracked. "That's insane. You're the face of the company. Your photo is on our website, in business magazines." Ethan grinned for the first time that day. "When's the last time you think a store manager in Zone 9 read Harvard Business Review? Besides," he rubbed his clean-shaven jaw, "I'm thinking it's time for a change of appearance." 3 days later, Ethan barely recognized himself in the mirror of his penthouse bathroom. His normally close-cropped hair was now covered by a shaggy brown wig. A carefully crafted beard, courtesy of a theater makeup artist who'd signed an ironclad NDA, changed the shape of his face. Thick-rimmed glasses and colored contacts completed the transformation. He'd studied videos of himself speaking to modify his usually crisp, authoritative tone into something more casual, with a slight regional accent. "The beard itches," he complained to Melissa, who was reviewing his fabricated identity one last time. "Your new life as Eric Thompson is full of hardship," she replied dryly. 34 years old, moved here 3 months ago after a divorce, previously worked as a rideshare driver in another state. Limited employment history because you spent 6 years trying to make it as a musician. Specific enough to explain any awkwardness, vague enough to be unverifiable. Ethan nodded. "The apartment? Leased under a shell company. Basic furnishings, nothing fancy. Your neighbor thinks you're a writer working on a book about the gig economy." Ethan slipped on the blue Swift-Bite jacket that thousands of his employees wore every day. It felt strange, both foreign and meaningful. "I still think this is unnecessary," Melissa said, concern edging her voice. "We could hire private investigators, set up anonymous reporting channels." "We've tried all that," Ethan interrupted. "Whatever's happening, it's sophisticated enough to evade conventional oversight. I built this company promising we'd revolutionize not just food delivery but how service workers are treated. If we're failing at that, I need to understand why." He pocketed the standard-issue company phone that would track his deliveries and earnings. 2 weeks. That's all I'm asking. No one knows except you. Legal has prepared the liability waivers, and security will monitor me discreetly. And if you get caught? Melissa challenged. Ethan shrugged. "I'll say I'm doing research for operational improvements." Not entirely untrue. As Melissa left to bring the car around, Ethan took one last look at his transformed reflection. Doubt flickered across his mind. Was he being paranoid? Overly dramatic? Was this some mid-career crisis masquerading as corporate responsibility? His phone buzzed with a new email. Another driver complaint, this one from Zone 9 again, describing how a single mother had her tips taxed by management and was now struggling to cover childcare costs. The doubt vanished. Something was deeply wrong at Swift-Bite, and the usual corporate channels weren't fixing it. Maybe nothing would come of his undercover mission, but he owed it to his drivers to find out. After all, he'd started this company from nothing, navigating a cutthroat industry through sheer determination and a refusal to accept failure. A little fieldwork shouldn't be beyond him. He grabbed the helmet for the company-issued electric scooter he'd be using and headed for the service elevator, a fitting start to his journey down from the executive suite to the streets where his company actually operated. Time to see how the other half lives, he murmured to himself, unexpectedly nervous about what he might discover. Ethan, now fully inhabiting his Eric Thompson persona, pulled up to the Zone 9 distribution hub on his company-issued electric scooter. The nondescript industrial building sat wedged between a self-storage facility and an auto body shop on the city's south side. From the outside, it looked like any other Swift-Bite hub, with the company's blue and white logo glowing above the entrance. Inside was another story. Unlike the pristine, energetic atmosphere of the hubs Ethan had visited on official CO tours, Zone 9 felt oppressive. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The break room consisted of 2 wobbly tables and a microwave that looked older than the company itself, and the drivers huddled in corners speaking in hushed tones. "You must be the newbie," a voice boomed from behind. Ethan turned to find himself face to face with a man whose Swift-Bite polo shirt strained against his broad chest. His name tag read, "Brent Holcomb, Zone Manager." "Eric Thompson." Ethan extended his hand, conscious of maintaining his altered voice. "First day." Brent's handshake was a deliberate power move, crushing Ethan's fingers. "Let me guess. Another artist who needs real money while waiting for his big break?" His tone made it clear what he thought of such aspirations. "Something like that," Ethan replied with the rehearsed sheepishness of Eric. "Just trying to get back on my feet after a rough patch." Brent snorted. "Well, Zone 9 isn't for the faint of heart. We run a tight ship here. Customers expect their orders hot and fast, and I expect my drivers to deliver. No excuses." He thrust a tablet at Ethan. "Your first batch of deliveries. We start you with the easy ones, but don't get comfortable. And don't bother the veterans with questions. They're paid for deliveries, not hand-holding." Ethan glanced around the room. Several drivers averted their eyes when he looked their way. "One more thing," Brent added, voice dropping. "Zone 9 has a system that works for everyone. Follow it, and you'll do fine. Bucket." He left the threat hanging in the air before walking away. Ethan's first 3 deliveries went smoothly. He navigated apartment buildings and office complexes, smiling politely as he handed over paper bags of food. His 4th delivery took him to a brownstone in an upscale neighborhood. The customer, an elderly woman with kind eyes, seemed delighted by her order. "Right on time, young man. The app said 30 minutes, and here you are in 23. She handed him the bag from an artisanal bakery. "My granddaughter's favorite cookies. She's flying in tonight." As Ethan confirmed the delivery on his phone, the woman pressed a $20 bill into his hand. "A little something extra for your promptness. I know you delivery folks work hard." "Thank you, ma'am. That's very generous," Ethan said, genuinely touched. In his regular life, he rarely interacted directly with customers. Back at the hub, Ethan was logging his completed deliveries when Brent materialized beside him. "Good first run," he said, oddly friendly. His eyes flicked to Ethan's pocket where the $20 tips sat. "Get any cash tips today?" Ethan hesitated, instinct telling him to lie. "Just one. $20. Brent held out his hand. "All cash tips go into the pool for fair redistribution. Company policy." Ethan knew perfectly well this wasn't company policy. He'd written the actual policy himself, which explicitly stated all tips belonged to individual drivers. But Eric Thompson wouldn't know that. "Oh, I didn't realize," he said, reluctantly handing over the 20. "When do we get our share of the pool?" Something dangerous flashed in Brent's eyes. "End of the month. Distribution is based on performance metrics." He pocketed the bill without recording it anywhere. "Don't worry about the details. Just focus on your deliveries." As Brent walked away, Ethan noticed a young driver watching the exchange. The man quickly looked down when Ethan caught his eye. Over the next few hours, Ethan completed 7 more deliveries. 2 customers tipped in cash, $5 each. Both times, upon his return, Brent appeared as if by magic to collect the pooled tips. Not once did Ethan see any driver receive money from this supposed pool. By the end of his shift, Ethan's suspicions had hardened into certainty. The tip scam was real, and Brent was at the center of it. But something told him this wasn't just one rogue manager. The practiced ease with which Brent operated, the culture of fear among the drivers, the lack of proper oversight, it all suggested a deeper problem. As Ethan turned in his scooter for the night, he spotted Brent talking to another employee in the parking lot. The man wore the same style of polo shirt but with "District Operations" embroidered below the logo. They spoke intensely, casting occasional glances at the drivers leaving the facility. "How was your first day?" a quiet voice asked. Ethan turned to find the driver who'd been watching earlier. His name tag read, "Marcus. Educational," Ethan replied carefully. Marcus nodded. "Word of advice? Don't ask questions about the tip pool. Not if you want to keep getting shifts." He walked away without waiting for a response, leaving Ethan with the uneasy feeling that he'd only scratched the surface of Zone 9's problems. 3 days into his undercover mission, Ethan had developed a routine. He'd arrive at the Zone 9 hub early, listening to conversations before other drivers noticed him. He'd complete his deliveries efficiently, earning Brent's grudging approval. And he'd watch, always watching, as cash tips disappeared into Brent's pocket with practiced regularity. Today, Ethan parked his scooter next to Marcus's. The soft-spoken driver had acknowledged him with small nods since their brief exchange on the first day, but they hadn't spoken again. "Morning," Ethan ventured. Marcus looked around before responding. "Morning." He hesitated, then added, "You're doing well for a newbie. Most don't last this long in Zone 9. Is that why there are so many new drivers? Ethan asked, keeping his tone casual as they walked toward the entrance. Zone 9 has the highest turnover rate in the city, Marcus confirmed, lowering his voice as they passed another driver. People figure out the system and either accept it or leave. The tip system, Ethan clarified. Marcus froze, his expression tightening. Look, man, I've got kids. A 5-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. I can't. He stopped abruptly as Brent emerged from the hub, coffee in hand. Thompson! Marcus! Brent called out. You two becoming friends? The question carried a threatening undertone. Just talking about the best routes to avoid downtown traffic, Ethan replied smoothly. Brent's eyes narrowed. Marcus knows all about efficient routes. Had to cut his shifts last month because he kept taking too long on deliveries. Isn't that right, Marcus? Marcus stared at the ground. Yes, sir. Still working on my timing. You do that, Brent said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Thompson, you're on the northwest section today. Get moving. As Ethan reached for his assigned tablet, Marcus whispered. Riverside Park. Lunch break. The bench by the east entrance. 2 hours later, Ethan found Marcus sitting alone on the specified bench, shoulders hunched, watching ducks glide across the small pond. I wasn't sure you'd come, Marcus said as Ethan sat beside him. Why wouldn't I? Because smart people don't ask questions in Zone 9. Marcus unwrapped his sandwich but didn't eat. Brent wasn't subtle about the warning. I've seen him assign new drivers who get too curious to dead zones, areas with few orders and even fewer tips. Or they suddenly find their accounts flagged for customer complaints that never happened. So everyone just accepts it? Ethan asked, genuine disbelief in his voice. Marcus finally looked at him directly. Do you know how hard it is to find flexible work that pays enough when you're a single dad? Sure, the app says I made good money last week, but after Brent takes his cut of every cash tip, I'm barely making ends meet. Why not report it? A bitter laugh escaped Marcus. To who? HR sends all complaints right back to district management. The last guy who tried ended up with 0 shifts for a month. Called it a system glitch. He leaned closer. It's not just Brent. Every Friday, he meets a man in the parking lot, drives a black Audi, wears a company jacket with district insignia. Brent hands him an envelope, they talk for 5 minutes, and then it's business as usual. Ethan felt a chill despite the warm day. How long has this been happening? Started about a year ago. That's when Brent changed. He was never exactly friendly, but he used to be fair. Marcus glanced at his watch. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this. But you seem different from the other newbies. Less desperate. More observant. Ethan chose his next words carefully. Have you ever considered gathering evidence? Multiple drivers filing complaints together? With what proof? Our word against theirs? Marcus shook his head. Besides, everyone's too scared. Brent makes it clear, complain and you're done. Not just at SwiftBite, but he'll make sure you can't get hired at any delivery service in the city. He can have that kind of power, Ethan said, momentarily forgetting his disguise. Maybe not legally. But these companies all talk. Get blacklisted as a problem employee and suddenly no one's hiring. Marcus stood, preparing to leave. I've said too much already. Just watch yourself. And if you're smart, you'll either play along or find another job. There's no changing the system. What if there was a way? Ethan pressed. Hypothetically. Would other drivers back you up if they knew they were protected? Something like hope flickered across Marcus's face before he suppressed it. Doesn't matter. No one's coming to save Zone 9. As Marcus walked away, Ethan fought the urge to reveal himself then and there. The corruption was worse than he'd imagined, not isolated incidents, but an organized operation with connections beyond a single manager. His company, his vision of fair treatment for gig workers, was being corrupted from within. That evening, after his shift, Ethan watched from across the street as Brent counted cash in his office. Through the window, Ethan could see him sorting bills into piles, occasionally consulting a notebook. The casual efficiency spoke of a long-established routine. Ethan retreated to his temporary apartment and made a secure call to Melissa. "It's happening, just like the complaints said," he told her. "But it's bigger than one manager. I need to set a trap, and I need it to be bulletproof." "What are you thinking?" Melissa asked, concern evident in her voice. "I'm thinking it's time to call in John from security," Ethan replied, determination hardening his voice. "Tell him to bring surveillance equipment. We're going to catch them red-handed." John Reeves, Swift Byte's head of security, didn't ask questions when he received Melissa's cryptic message. After 15 years in military intelligence before joining the private sector, he understood the value of discretion. Now, sitting in an unmarked van 2 blocks from the Zone 9 hub, he handed Ethan a small black case. "Everything you asked for," John said, his expression professionally neutral despite the unusual circumstances of meeting his CEO in a parking lot, disguised as a delivery driver. "The bills are marked with invisible ink that shows under UV light. The button camera is the latest model, virtually undetectable, and streams directly to our secure server." Ethan examined the tiny camera designed to look like an ordinary button for his Swift Byte jacket. "And the order? Placed under a false name to the address you specified. $50 tip added in cash, not through the app," John confirmed. "The system will assign it to you at approximately 2:30 p.m. today, which should put you back at the hub around the time you mentioned this Brent character does his afternoon accounting." Ethan nodded, the weight of what he was about to do settling on him. "If what we suspect is true, this isn't just one manager skimming tips. This could implicate people all the way up the regional level. Are you sure you want to handle this yourself?" John asked. "I could have a team." "No," Ethan cut him off. "I need to see it with my own eyes. But I want you monitoring everything. If anything goes sideways, you're my backup." The morning passed with excruciating slowness. Ethan completed his regular deliveries, hyper-aware of every interaction at the hub. Around 1 p.m., he noticed Brent watching him more closely than usual. "Thompson," Brent called as Ethan returned from a delivery. "A word." Ethan followed him to a small office in the back, conscious of the button camera, recording everything. "You've been spending time with Marcus," Brent said without preamble, leaning against his desk. "Interesting choice of friend. He helped me figure out some shortcuts," Ethan replied with carefully calculated casualness. "Uh-huh." Brent studied him. "You know, Eric, I pride myself on reading people. It's how I've stayed successful in this business. And something about you doesn't quite add up." Ethan's pulse quickened, but he maintained his composure. "Not sure what you mean." "Your background check was clean. Too clean, almost." Brent smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "But everyone has secrets, don't they?" "I'm just here to work, man," Ethan said, channeling Eric's supposed desperation. "I need this job." Brent's posture relaxed slightly. "Good. Keep that attitude and we'll get along fine. I'd hate to see you end up like some of our former employees who thought they could change how things operate around here." The threat hung in the air between them. "Understood," Ethan replied, silently noting how easily Brent moved from suspicion to intimidation, clearly his standard management technique. At exactly 2:28 p.m., Ethan's phone pinged with the special order. The address belonged to an upscale apartment building where John had arranged temporary access. As Ethan collected the food package from the restaurant, he confirmed the marked $50 bill was sealed in an envelope with the delivery. The customer, actually one of John's security team, made a show of handing Ethan the envelope. "That's for you, buddy. Great service deserves proper recognition." Ethan thanked him and returned to his scooter, heart pounding. This was the moment of truth. Back at the hub, Ethan made sure to arrive during the pre-shift change bustle. He logged the delivery completion on his tablet, making it official in the system. As predicted, Brent materialized beside him within minutes. "Good day, Thompson?" he asked, eyes already fixed on the envelope partially visible in Ethan's jacket pocket. "Not bad," Ethan replied. Just finished a delivery to the Westmore. Fancy place? Those residents usually tip well, Brent remarked, his attempted casualness transparent. Ethan feigned reluctance as he withdrew the envelope. Yeah, got a good one this time. Brent's hand shot out. You know the drill by now. All cash tips go to the pool. With the camera recording every moment, Ethan surrendered the envelope. Right. The pool. Don't worry, Brent said, pocketing the envelope without opening it. Everyone gets their fair share. Through the remainder of his shift, Ethan discreetly observed Brent. Shortly after 5 p.m., Brent retreated to his office and emptied several envelopes onto his desk, sorting cash into piles. Ethan positioned himself to capture footage through the window, watching as Brent placed the majority into a white business envelope and tucked a smaller amount into his wallet. At 5:45 p.m., Brent locked his office and headed to the parking lot. Ethan followed at a safe distance, his heart racing when he spotted a black Audi idling in the far corner of the lot. From behind a van, Ethan recorded as Brent approached the car. The window lowered, revealing a middle-aged man in a Swift Bite regional director's jacket. Words were exchanged, the white envelope passed hands, and after a brief conversation, the Audi drove away. Ethan retreated to his scooter, hands nearly shaking as he sent the prearranged text to John. Package delivered. Evidence secured. His phone buzzed almost immediately with John's response. Footage received. Crystal clear. What's your next move, sir? Ethan stared at the message, resolution crystallizing. Tomorrow morning, he typed. Prepare the conference room at Zone 9. And alert legal. It's time to end this. The next morning, Zone 9 buzzed with unusual activity. Drivers whispered about the corporate SUVs in the parking lot and the stream of suits entering the hub's rarely used conference room. By 8:30 a.m., rumors had reached a fever pitch. I heard it's a surprise audit, one driver told Ethan as they waited for their morning assignments. Nah, another countered. Someone said it's about a merger. We're all getting fired. Ethan kept his head down, focusing on his phone. Overnight, he'd coordinated with Melissa and the company's legal team. Everything was in place. At 9 a.m. sharp, Brent strode in, his typical swagger diminished by obvious anxiety. Everyone just do your jobs, he barked. I'll handle the suits. As he disappeared into the conference room, Ethan slipped away to the restroom. There, he carefully removed his disguise, the wig, the beard, the colored contacts. He changed into the suit John had brought him and straightened his tie, staring at his reflection. After years of seeing his face on company materials, it felt strange to look like himself again. His phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Ready when you are. With one deep breath, Ethan stepped out and walked directly to the conference room. The hushed conversation inside ceased immediately when he opened the door. Brent was mid-sentence, standing at the head of the table surrounded by people from corporate he clearly didn't recognize. His face went slack when he saw Ethan. Mr. Cole? He stammered. What are you doing here? We weren't told you'd be joining. I've been here all week, Brent, Ethan replied calmly. You know me as Eric Thompson. The color drained from Brent's face as recognition dawned. Around the table sat Melissa, John, two members of Swift Bite's legal team, and the company's head of human resources. At the far end, looking considerably less comfortable than the others, was James Harrington, the regional director, the man from the black Audi. Please sit down, Ethan gestured to the empty chair. We have a lot to discuss. I don't understand, Brent said, his confident demeanor crumbling. What is this about? Ethan nodded to John, who activated the large screen on the wall. It displayed a split screen of footage, Brent collecting Ethan's $50 tip, Brent counting cash in his office, and finally, Brent handing the envelope to James in the parking lot. This is about systematic theft from the people who make this company run, Ethan said, his voice hard. It's about abuse of power, intimidation, and betrayal of everything Swift Bite stands for. James stood abruptly. This is preposterous. I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, Cole, but you can't. Actually, I can. Ethan cut him off. 3 separate cameras captured you accepting money that rightfully belonged to our drivers. Money that was marked, by the way. He slid a UV light across the table. Would you like to check your wallet? James sank back into his chair. We've been tracking financial discrepancies across regions for months, Melissa added, opening a folder. Once we knew what to look for, the pattern became clear. Zone 9 isn't the only hub with mysteriously disappearing tips. The head of HR spoke next. We've already interviewed 15 drivers this morning who have provided statements about the tip pool scheme. They described in detail how those who complained faced retaliation, reduced hours, difficult routes, eventual termination. Brent's face hardened. These are baseless accusations from disgruntled employees who... Save it, Ethan interrupted. I experienced it myself. I watched you pocket cash that belonged to your drivers. I heard you threaten Marcus for trying to help a new employee. For the first time, something like fear crossed Brent's face. You can't prove anything. John slid another folder across the table. Actually, we can. Financial forensics discovered discrepancies in 3 other zones under Mr. Harrington's supervision. All showing the same pattern of cash diversions, all with the same punitive scheduling for drivers who complained. James finally broke. This is a hostile work environment. I've given 10 years to this company. You can't treat me like a criminal based on some conspiracy theory. It's not a theory when we have you on video accepting stolen money. One of the lawyers replied coolly. The question now is how far up this goes and how long it's been happening. Ethan stood, commanding the room's attention. Brent Holcomb, as of this moment, you are terminated from SwiftBite for gross misconduct, theft, and creating a hostile work environment. He turned to James. Mr. Harrington, the same applies to you. Additionally, we've already notified the authorities. Corporate theft at this scale is a criminal matter. As if on cue, 2 police officers appeared at the door. The room fell silent as they entered. This is ridiculous, James sputtered. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. I look forward to it, Ethan replied, unmoved. And to being deposed about what I personally witnessed this past week. After the officers escorted Brent and James out, Ethan addressed the remaining executives. This investigation doesn't end here. I want every hub audited, every complaint reviewed, every manager evaluated. This cancer stops now. Melissa nodded, pride evident in her expression. What about the drivers? Ethan checked his watch. They should be gathering in the main area as we requested. It's time they learned what's been happening, and what's going to change. As he prepared to address the drivers of Zone 9, Ethan caught his reflection in the conference room window. Behind the CEO title and the expensive suit stood a man who'd reconnected with the foundation of his company. Now came the harder part, rebuilding trust and making things right. The main area of Zone 9 had never been so quiet. Drivers stood in a loose semicircle, their expressions ranging from confusion to apprehension as they watched the door to the conference room. When Ethan stepped out, followed by the corporate team, a wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Is that? It can't be. What's Ethan Cole doing here? Marcus pushed forward, his eyes darting between Ethan and the corporate suits behind him. Then recognition dawned on his face. Eric? Ethan nodded, a small smile breaking through his serious expression. Not quite. My name is Ethan Cole. I'm the CEO of SwiftBite. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Marcus stood frozen, likely replaying every conversation they'd had over the past week. I owe you all an explanation, Ethan began, his voice cutting through the noise. And more importantly, an apology. For the past week, I've been working undercover as a driver in Zone 9 because something wasn't adding up in our numbers. Drivers were reporting missing tips while customer surveys showed generous tipping. He paused, making eye contact with as many drivers as possible. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. A systematic theft of your hard-earned tips orchestrated by management, coupled with intimidation to keep you silent. The room fell completely silent. As of this morning, Brent Holcomb and Regional Director James Harrington have been terminated and are facing criminal charges for theft and creating a hostile work environment. But that's just the beginning. Melissa stepped forward with a stack of envelopes. We've been working through the night to calculate estimated lost earnings for each of you based on delivery records and average tip rates. These checks represent your stolen tips plus a 20% compensation for the injustice you've experienced. As she began calling names and distributing envelopes, disbelief turned to cautious hope across the room. Additionally, Ethan continued, we've implemented an immediate company-wide policy change. All cash tips will be yours to keep, no pooling, no sharing with management. All digital tips will be tracked through a new transparent system that you can monitor in real time through your driver app. He gestured to John, who held up a tablet displaying a new interface. This update is being pushed to all driver accounts today. If you ever notice discrepancies, you'll have a direct line to our corporate ethics team, bypassing local management entirely. One driver raised her hand tentatively. What about those of us who complained before? We were given fewer shifts, worse routes. Every scheduling and performance record for the past year is being audited, Ethan assured her. Any retaliatory actions will be reversed, with back pay for lost shifts. Marcus finally found his voice. Why did you do this yourself? Why not send investigators? It was the question Ethan had been expecting. Because I needed to see it firsthand. Reports and data can be manipulated, but experiencing what you all lived with daily, that couldn't be filtered or sanitized. He stepped closer to the group. When I started SwiftBite, I promised it would be different from other gig economy companies. That we'd value the people making deliveries as much as the customers receiving them. Somewhere along the way, that vision was corrupted by people who saw your labor as something to exploit. Ethan cleared his throat, emotion threatening to break through his professional demeanor. That ends today. He turned to Marcus. Marcus, I'd like to offer you a new position as lead driver for Zone 9. You'll oversee scheduling, training, and serve as a liaison between drivers and management. Your integrity and courage impressed me from day one. Marcus's eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. The position comes with a salary increase, benefits, and regular hours that work with your kids' schedules. A spontaneous round of applause broke out among the drivers. Marcus, overwhelmed, could only nod his acceptance. Over the next hour, Ethan and his team addressed individual concerns, outlined additional reforms, and promised ongoing transparency. An atmosphere of cautious optimism replaced the fear that had defined Zone 9. As the meeting wound down, Ethan found himself face to face with Marcus again. Thank you for trusting me that day in the park, Ethan said quietly. Even when you had every reason not to. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. I still can't believe the CEO was delivering pizzas alongside me. Best decision I've made in years, Ethan replied. It reminded me why I started this company, and who really makes it work. 3 months later, SwiftBite released its quarterly report. Driver retention was up 47%, customer satisfaction had increased by 22%, and the new tip transparency system had been featured in business publications as an industry-leading innovation. In his corner office, Ethan kept a framed photo on his desk, himself in the blue delivery jacket, standing with the Zone 9 drivers on his last day undercover. It served as a daily reminder that the view from the executive suite was no substitute for understanding the reality on the ground. The investigation ultimately uncovered similar schemes in 12 different zones across 3 regions, resulting in 20 terminations and 16 criminal charges. But more importantly, it sparked a cultural reset throughout the company. As Ethan often said in subsequent interviews, companies don't succeed because of executives in boardrooms. They succeed because of the people doing the actual work every day. Sometimes CEOs need to remember what that work looks like. The SwiftBite scandal, and Ethan's unusual approach to solving it, became a case study in business schools nationwide. But for Ethan, the most satisfying outcome was simpler. Drivers like Marcus could now count on receiving every dollar they earned, with dignity and respect.